Good morning, everybody. It's quite crispy out there. Be careful if you're having to spend any amount of time outside. We will start our meeting with our public comment. Is there anyone wishing to address the Winona County Board? Sheriff Ganrith?
Good morning.
Morning.
We have some visitors here from the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
Let me get them.
All right.
Scott McConkey has been here a number of times in the past, and he's back today to present some awards to Deputy Chad Meyer and Deputy Chad Wenzel.
Morning.
Good morning. Can I remove this to talk?
If you're speaking, yes, you can.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. Oh, I stayed here. Okay. I stayed over last night and enjoyed the frosty ride last night from Mankato, but I would have driven 10 times that distance to be able to do this today. This is unique, and we presented award to Deputy Myers for his efforts in DWI enforcement, but today is very unique because he's getting 2 awards, and they both have a number 10 with him. Part of this fact, the first award was presented up to the Twins game for the DWI All-Stars, of the top DWI folks that try to keep us safe across the state. And but the bats did not arrive in time, with all the things with COVID and backups. So we were able to present that bat in front of you folks today. And then he also got what we call the DWI hat trick for the 10th time. So this is his 10th year in a row being DWI All-Star. Maybe there is somebody, we'll be here in a minute to explain that, but I don't know. He's gotten it 10 years in a row and also had 10 hat tricks. So we're going to have Dwayne introduce himself, our DWI coordinator out of St. Paul. I should explain, I'm the law enforcement liaison. I'm kind of the guy on the road that's covering southern Minnesota. So Dwayne.
Thanks, Scott.
Good morning.
I am Dwayne Seachlog. I'm with the Department of Public Safety in the Office of Traffic Safety. I'm in Impaired Driving Program Coordinator. And one of my projects that I oversee is enforcement recognition such as this. The DWI All-Stars, the DWI Enforcer All-Stars are nominated by a supervisor within a law enforcement agency. And I select the highest number of arrests, both in the metro area and greater Minnesota. And Chad has been selected 10 consecutive years. The bat does come from Louisville Slugger in Kentucky. The engraving is put on there of the officer's name, a little logo here, but there was a production issue due to COVID, and we didn't get them in time for the game last July. So I'm happy to present this to Chad. I have seen his trophy room. I've seen a photograph of it. It's an amazing accomplishment, and he is, as Scott mentioned, the only law enforcement officer in the state to do this 10 consecutive times and earn his 10 hat trick.
Chad, as you can tell, Chad just loves us. But I tell cops, and I was a law enforcement officer for 33 years. And I felt the same when I ever received recognition. You don't do it for the recognition. You do it because you believe in what you do. And Chad is absolutely that. If you've heard his story before, how he lost a friend to impaired driving, it's what motivates him and keeps going and be able to keep people safe. So I tell cops, it's not just about you. It's about you and all your partners, what you do every day to keep us safe. And once in a while, we get an opportunity, pick one out of the crowd and say, hey, thanks for going above and beyond. So that brings me to the hat trick hockey stick. This is something I want to make very clear to you folks and to everyone here. this is not a race. It's not a competition. If that was our focus, we lost total sight on what we're trying to accomplish. But what this does, it represents a work ethic that says never give up. So what we've done, and I spent most of my career working straight nights. I was a trooper out of southeast Minnesota, and yes, I covered your area. If you don't recognize me from 20 years ago, I was only here when the lights were out. I worked straight nights my whole career. But it's, I've never arrested 3 impaired drivers in a night. It's a lot of work. One can take up almost a whole evening. So we say when you go out and you find one, and then you go out again and find another one, and then still go out and then find a third one, it says there's a work ethic that says never give up. So almost instead of saying a hat trick word, I almost like to say a never give up word. Chad's unique in another area. Well, there was a night, maybe 2, where he didn't give up after 3, and he's one of the few officers in the state who actually arrested impaired and processed 4 drunk drivers within a single shift. And again, not a competition, not a race, but we just want to recognize when an officer is head and shoulders above in their commitment and goes out and takes care of us all and keeps us safe. So I know your time is valuable. This means a lot to us that you let us come in and do this. And I tell you, I've worked with your sheriff your sheriff's been stuck with me for 10 years now, and the chief deputy here, and it's a wonderful department. And it just, when his officers and he stands head and shoulders, it just reflects across the whole state. And more than ever, we need that. So, and I also just going to say real quick, it's not about numbers, because the people we arrest are people. And we recognize that, we value them, we respect them. We just know that there was error, and we just want to keep their error from getting worse. So that's important to us too, because it kind of touches all of us in one way or another. So, Chad, I've said enough. I'm sure you got a lot of words you want to say. So, Chad, buddy, thank you, pal. And then real quick, I'm gonna, unfortunately, Deputy Wenzel couldn't be here, but he was another one of our all-stars, and I have a plaque and a hat, and Chad received these at the all-star game. But I'm gonna read this because it reflects well on what both these officers have done. In recognition of Winona County Sheriff Deputy Wenzel's and Meyer's DWI enforcement efforts, they are designated as 2021 DWI All-Stars by the Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety. So he'll be getting that as well. I wish he was here to thank him for his efforts. And I just did something on my own. They just came in. I thought we needed to change those a little bit. So we had, instead of just saying that it's the 10th hat trick and the 10th All-Star, decals for his bat. So Chad's the only one getting these. It's tacky doing it this way, but sorry. I just didn't get time to put them on yet as things are going. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for your support of law enforcement that helps keep us all safe.
Okay, so I have to ask you, I'm kind of more of a basketball fan. So what's the
Okay.
basketball? Is there a basketball award he needs to work
Well,
towards?
you know what? I don't know a lot about hockey other than they, kind of get little skirmishes once in a while. But in hockey, if you get 3 goals in a row, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's how we've used that. But maybe we'll have to come up with some basketball. So,
Double.
Yeah.
3-pointer.
So many 3-pointers. Well, thank you very much for coming and making these awards. We appreciate the hard work they're doing. It is unfortunate that we have a DWI problem, but I guess we're not unique in that. It just happens. And like you said, to try and make these people's error less than it need be and stuff. So
Could I have 1 more minute?
you sure can.
Thank you. So if you recall, we came to the board and asked about getting a grant filled from the state for a DWI officer. we got that, and Chad was the only one that put in for it, so we gave him that position. And we are in the process of backfilling his position. We're doing backgrounds on a deputy that we had temporary position through the grant cycle. And then we hope to get that grant again next year and the year after. But Chad is already doing that work under the grant.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, there's weather on the way, so be safe today. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Emily Zanone. I am a agency. And I just wanted to say good morning and that I'm happy to be here this morning. If there are any additional questions about the agenda item 5.15, the WinLab prioritization and public outreach project, I'm happy to answer any questions when it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
Yes, I'd like
Okay,
to address the
all right.
board.
Please.
We're gonna need Mr. Fritz up here. Oh. Ken, on behalf of the full county board, want to thank you for all you've done for Winona County, what you've done for the citizenry, what you've done for the organization, where you've taken us from, where you've taken us to. When Pat Melvin asked me, Steve, what qualities would you like to see in a new county administrator? It was easy for me to respond quite quickly. Please just duplicate Ken Fritz. And with that, so I'll read this. Let me put this, my glasses on here. This just says, with grateful appreciation, the Winona County Board of Commissioners recognizes Ken Fritz for your years of humble dedication and commitment to making it a great day to live in Winona County. Our community is a better place because of you. Congratulations on your retirement. Thank you. March, you said you left 15 minutes for his acceptance speech.
Yeah, we got plenty of time for his. Except I actually never recognized his letter of resignation. I didn't acknowledge it, so it's not official.
Oh, yeah. I'll keep it short. I really appreciate the time I've spent here and all the people that I've come in contact with and that have worked with me, especially the department heads, the county board, various community leaders. I think the one thing, it's kind of a bittersweet. I would love to spend another 10 years here working, but at the same time goes on and you get older and you want to spend some time with other people in your family and so forth. So it's one of those tough decisions, but I hope that I've moved the county forward some, and I hope that to be around and to try to contribute to the county in other ways and the city of Winona. And again, I just appreciate everybody that I've come across. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? I'm looking at our monitor here. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? And last call, is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? Okay, seeing nobody step forward, we'll move on in our meeting. Item 3, approval of the county board meeting minutes. We have 3.1, closed session, December 14th, 2021, and 3.2, county board, December 14th, 2021.
I move approval. I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kavesi, second by Commissioner Meyer to move approval. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Commissioner Kavesi?
I have one announcement at the end.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer?
Nothing for me today, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob,
For separate votes, I would like to pull 5-1, 5-2, 5-1-5, 5-1-6, and 5-1-7.
okay, so we've got, we'll make those before our general business, so 5-1, 5.2, 5.15, 5.16, and 5.17. Is that correct?
Sorry,
Okay.
can you say that again?
5.1,
Right,
5.2, and then 5.15, 5.16, and 5.17 for separate votes and potential discussion. All right. Mr. Fritz, did you have anything to change?
no, I don't.
Last chance.
Nope. it's good.
No, okay, it's good. Attorney Sonneman?
I just wanted to say I may excuse myself like about 10 o'clock-ish if the
Okay.
meeting keeps going, because I do need to get to my treatment.
Okay,
Mail.
we'll excuse
I'm
you.
gonna
That's a
Try to
valid
beat the snow, so, yeah.
beat the snow.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, and I think everything's been pulled that I also had, so nothing at this time. So we would entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So move. I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, amended agenda approved. Mr. Fritz, would you read the consent business for the record, please?
I will. You're gonna have to help me here too, because
Yeah.
I have two different screens trying to go here on the,
Okay.
which got all those things that got pulled. So 5.1 was pulled, I believe.
Yes.
5.2 was pulled.
Correct.
5.15
Yes.
was pulled. All right. So I'll go 5.3. Review and approve resolution to support and agree to Minnesota State Subdivision Agreement in multi-state national opioid settlement cases. 5.4, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Bluff County chapter of the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. 5.5, approve monthly resolution. 5.6, approve purchase of service agreement with Lewiston Altura Public Schools, ISD number 857 for transportation of children and youth in foster care placement. 5.7, approve Minnesota's Department of Human Services grant contract for children's mental health screening. 5.8, approve business associate agreement with Family and Children's Center. 5.9, approve renewal of grant and purchase of service agreement with Project Find for information and referral advocacy and interpreter services. 5.10, approve renewal of professional service agreement with Melissa McLaren, MA, LPCC for professional consultation and reflective practice supervision services for staff involved in Healthy Families of Southeast Minnesota project. Mouthful. 5.11, approve resolution designating transportation sales tax projects. 5.12, approve resolution for safe routes to school projects in St. Charles. 5.13, approve Winona Healthy Balance Agreement. 5.14, approve resolution for 2022 Sheriff's Uniform Allowance. 5.15, was that pulled?
Yes.
Okay, 5.15 was pulled. 5.16 was pulled. 5.17
Yeah.
was pulled, and 5.18 was not pulled, right?
Correct.
Okay, so 5.18, approved 2022 fee schedule. 5.19, approve renewal of service with SAP Concur. And 5.20, confirm payment of disbursements. And that should conclude the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the consent business as read. Any discussion? Just one real quick thing, being that before Attorney Sonneman leaves, 5.3 was the opioid settlement, and we do need to recognize that Attorney Sonneman worked very diligently through her own issues, and I think got us the state of Minnesota actually a very good settlement working with the metropolitan attorneys and the attorney general. So thank you for that work. It was important from an AMC position to have a smaller outstate attorney work on that project, because sometimes the small counties feel that they aren't represented when we depend on the Hennepin and Ramsey counties to do our litigation and negotiations. So that was greatly appreciated. I know a lot of small counties look to Winona County to be a leader in that. So thank you very much for that.
Very welcome, thank you.
Okay. All right. So any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, consent agenda is approved. So now going back to 5.1, award bid of detention equipment to NOAA Detention Construction. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I don't have discussion, just in being consistent with voting against the jail project in general. I just wanted it pulled for separate vote. I'll be voting against 5.1 and 5.2, just to be consistent with my previous votes.
I would move to approve 5.1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve 5.1, which is the award bid for detention equipment to NOAA Detention Construction. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, it passes. 5.2, approve amended guaranteed maximum price and amended AIA agreement for the jail project.
Same
Commissioner
thing.
Jacob.
I don't have discussion. I just wanted a separate vote. Motion to approve 5.2.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve 5.2. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right, it's approved. Then moving on to 5.15. Approve WinLAC prioritization and public outreach project agreement and supporting sub-agreements. Commissioner Jacob,
Yeah, okay, so
that's page
I'm looking at
140,
page.
148. I think it's one,
40.
yeah, it starts on 148.
Okay, so the reason that I had discussion on this last time it came before us was due to the tying of vaccination requirements to the contract. And I'm looking at page 166, 12.3.1. And I guess for me, as long as vaccination proof and or testing is tied to the payments, I would vote against it just until that's, I mean, I don't know where this, it's a start of something different that hasn't been in other contracts. And I don't know if it could end up with, if they want to test us for whether we've had all our vaccinations back to when we were children. It just seems inappropriately tied to the intent of the contract. So until vaccination language is out of the contract, I can't support it. And
Could I address that, Commissioner
Yes,
Jacobs?
Please.
I know you had asked me to look into this at the December
14th.
14th, thank you. This did come up in discussion at every Wednesday, the County Attorneys Association has a kind of call-in meeting or Zoom meeting with the members, and Sherburne County Attorney had been addressing that, and I was going to follow up with her because there's that also came up. We're not the only county questioning that. So I apologize for not being able to get that information to find out exactly what's going on here, but there was some discussion. I read somewhere where the state can't direct, the state is not the employer here to the contractor, since the county would be the contractor here. So that language may be not supported by the law. So I'm not sure what to do about it at this point in time. I know you want to move forward with this, and maybe we could, with the exception of paragraph 12, depending on how the board feels about the rest of it, keep that out until the matter of whether vaccination requirements is actually required is settled. But the trend seems to be that should not be in there where the state's dictating to some contractor that is not an employee of the state. So
And that was my thought, is that we could approve it. We'll just delete section 12 and let the state challenge us
Right,
instead
right.
of us
And-
having
and
to
we'll-
challenge
we'll
them.
Try to settle this in terms of, but
Yeah.
again, the trend was going toward that the state could not dictate to any contractor, be it another government agency or a private contractor.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair?
I had,
Yeah, no,
Ms. Qualley may have something
yeah, I
to
had,
add. It
I
looks like
had-
she was trying to get,
since she's up there, the questions are probably for her. so-
Okay.
Okay.
So, my apologies, because our request for county board action ran to a second page, I wasn't alerted to the fact that it wasn't in the packet. So that was a slight irregularity, which is why you have it on your, at your places. Regardless of the outcome of the, discussions with other counties and other county legal staffs, staff members, this particular grant, the chloride monitoring tasks can be done by a contractor, completely socially distant because, they're taking samples of water in the outdoors. So, public outreach events have not been scheduled, but if we followed ordinary counties spacing and social distancing, we can also meet those requirements. So while that shakes out through the legal system and through counties, this particular grant I'm recommending not be held up, because we can fully, satisfy anything in terms of the social distancing for the public participation events. If you wouldn't mind, Madam Chair and county board members, Emily Zanone is here from the state. She can speak better to whether or not something can be edited out or in fact the points that I've made. Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer, did that
Oh,
answer?
So, I assume, there's a date of the 20th of December for required signatures. Have we missed that date?
I don't think there wouldn't be an issue if the board approves it today.
So we-
Then the contracting staff with MPCA would just send the agreement to county staff for their approval, and then it would become effective after
Okay.
that signature.
But we do need to approve it this month,
That
or?
would be nice,
it-
yes,
yeah,
because,
okay.
we're in the season of salt spreading, and so we want to be able to capture any chloride that might make it into our surface waters.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess while I'm up here, I could just clarify kind of what this policy means and how it gets kind of shaken down to this project itself. And so that policy, from what I understand it and what we've been communicated at the staff level, is that it's only in effect when social distancing can't be met. So like, if we were having these outreach events and we were, having a lot of people in a room or we're not able to maintain social distancing, that's when the contractors that we would be hiring as, PCA staff, so that would mean either county staff or other contractors, would then be responsible for either testing or getting vaccinated.
It has a long tail, in my opinion. If we agree to sign this, we're agreeing to implement those kind of practices. So I guess, again, I'll stick with, I would sign it. I mean, it's not a huge project. It's an important project, I guess. But to take item 12 just out of there, like I said, delete it and then send it back to them. And if MPCA wants to catch it and tell us no, then we'll suffer the consequences of that. But I just think signing it and agreeing to it is problematic. And I do see something in here that it says somewhere that Wabasha and the River SWCD. And I've been playing phone tag with a few people, and a couple of the people had no idea they were committing to testing or being the vaccination police or anything like that. So I don't know that they read the contract. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, along these lines, at the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, our meeting before last, we had a requirement come through attached to a grant that we would become the enforcing agency of the groundwater protection rule. And our board wanted no part of enforcement. We would, help with cooperating with grants and facilitating. But if the state wants things enforced, they need. So we amended the contract on the basis of we'd accept it if the state accepted our amendment. And if they didn't accept our amendment, we didn't want the contract. And they came back a month later accepting our amendments. So I feel like this would be very much a parallel if we say we amend this to eliminate item number 12 on this contract and send it back to the state. And if they don't want to, that's where I would be at. That's the only way I would vote for approval.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes,
respectfully, if the contractors that are sampling outside in streams, have no relationship with this vaccination or testing requirement because they would be exempt from it because of the work that's being conducted in the service of the grant. And if public participation events merely mimic or are in fact in county buildings following county rules, then we would not be in violation of the vaccination testing requirements of number 12 on page 404 of the contract. We would merely be following county rules that are presently in place. Thank you.
Well, the county can change their regulations at any time, and then we're subject to what we sign. So this speaks to a larger subject, and it's a stepping stone to a place that I feel is inappropriate with the intent of the dollars that are being put forward here, and who ultimately is responsible for the enforcing. And in this case, that should fall back to the person issuing the grant, not us.
Madam Chair.
Attorney Sonneman.
I just also wanted to note, at the federal level, this is an issue as well, and there's some court cases. So I think it's really in flux. And with all due respect to my colleagues here, I think that it would be best to X out section 12 and move forward with a vote on the rest of it, and then deal with section 12 as been proposed. So,
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, the fact that it may not be legal troubles me, obviously. The fact that it is in agreement with CDC policies, and we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and we're under emergency procedures for the county, makes me think it should be in here. But if it's possibly not legal, I guess we can't keep it in there.
Madam Chair? Commissioner Meyer, can I ask this question? So what's your take on if we were to take the attorney's advice and X out that paragraph? What do you think would be the consequence?
I mean, that is something that I'll have to take back to the contracting staff who actually drafted the joint powers agreement. I don't have any authority to say whether or not that would be acceptable, but I will definitely shoot that back to them today and see if they can give us a response. Yep.
So I want to say that I honestly feel like Commissioner Jacobs' remarks are somewhat of an overreaction. If you look at the contracts for the sub-agreements, you will see that we are a drug-free workplace. And so we're requiring that any contractor abide by the terms of being a drug-free workplace. And given that we are in the middle of a pandemic, I don't really see that a vaccine or a testing, and that's the thing, this isn't a vaccine requirement. You can get around it by the testing. And further, what MPCA staff, as in your case, Emily, is telling us that it doesn't even actually apply. So I don't feel like this is some step to further restrictions. I mean, I understand that this whole conversation about public health efforts kind of comes down to this dichotomy, where I might say, well, it's only prudent because we want to protect the people around us, right? That's why I've been advocating through the Compassionate COVID campaign. I want people to get vaccinated for the good of our entire community. And I understand that the primary argument on the other side is one of infringing upon my freedoms. And I think that while I have a difficult time understanding that, I can tell that folks on the other side have a real difficult time with my my sort of my side of what I'm doing as well. I'm not sure what the solution is to that issue, but I'm not particularly worried about this paragraph, given kind of all of the surrounding items. I will abide by the county attorney's advice, just in terms of legality, because if you hire an expert, you ought to listen to them. But I worry that we don't actually do chloride testing when it's a chemical of concern. And that this, in fact, in the same way is like, well, so how far does this go? In terms of not taking money to finance efforts and work that the county needs to do and should be doing because of some kind of an ideological kind of statement inside the contract. I hate to see where this is going. I do think it'd be better if we all could agree and go ahead and vote for it. So I'm hopeful that just striking that paragraph will work, but if it needed to come back to us with that paragraph in it, I would be comfortable voting for it.
Mr. Jacob.
So where it states this section applies to contractors, employees, or subcontractors who are performing contracted work. This is setting a precedence for what the WinLAC does in the future. And certainly there's going to be times where there's going to be on the ground cat work, grade stabs, and there's going to be contractors probably who are going to look at this and going to say, well, I ain't bidding on that job. I don't want to deal with testing all my employees every day, and I'm responsible for that. I think it could greatly impact the amount of people, places, or contractors that would be willing to do work within Winona County. So again, I feel like this is the state's responsibility, and however they want to enforce that, they can be the enforcing on that. It's their grant, and it shouldn't be passed down. So I'm just not there. If we remove that section, I'll vote in favor.
I do have a question, and maybe Commissioner Kavesi can give us an answer. Winona County is kind of being thrown into this, but it's a multi-county project. And it says on page 149, that the project information, it's Winona, Wabasha, and Houston. It's 3 counties that are in this watershed. But then in the note that we're given here today, it says Winona County has not yet approved the joint powers agreement. What's the timeline? I mean, we're getting put in the hot seat here over this $26,000 grant when it's really a project for multi-counties. It's a one watershed, one plan. So here we are, we're kind of mixing moving the pieces. So do we have an idea, Commissioner Kavesi, when the joint powers agreement will be approved so that,
So
well,
if you look at page 163, there's the actual JPA that we're signing with MPCA.
no, but I'm saying the WinLAC. I feel that Winona County shouldn't even be doing this because it's a multi-county project. Although I see most of the testing is done in Winona County. I see Skunk Hollow, which I think is really close to La Crescent, is being tested, but most of it isn't. So where are we at with the joint powers agreement for WinLAC? I feel they should be deciding, and that would be 3 counties.
I think Sheila would like
Does
to
Sheila?
answer.
Yes,
Does Sheila?
I defer to Sheila.
Okay, all right,
Yes,
that's fine.
We do have a meeting, the
On the 10th
second
of
Monday.
January,
Yeah, the
correct.
second Monday.
Because
yeah.
my concern is that Winona County is making commitments for Wabasha and Houston, and I don't know if they're
Well, this.
willing for us to do that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is some, the WinLAC grant, which that came through Bowser. And right now, so we have that. Winona County did sign that agreement, and then the fiscal is Root River SWCD. So we have the WinLAC planning process. We have that grant. And so we have the policy committee for that. And we did update the policy committee at our meetings that the MPCA. And so this is tied to the WinLAC watershed, but it's not married to the WinLAC planning grant. Those are 2 different grants. We already have the WinLAC planning grant. And I might say that this language in paragraph 12 was not in that planning grant. So this grant has this language. This grant is through the MPCA. And to do supplemental waterside chats, which we have been wanting to do to add more civic engagement pieces or public participation for the planning process.
That's fine. So my question though is, when is the what's the schedule for the joint powers agreement to be finalized for WinLAC? Do you have a timeline?
What was referenced in that is this joint powers agreement. The MPC, they entitle all of their grants with local entities, they call them JPAs, joint power agreements. So that's, if you look on page 163, joint powers agreement, it's right up in the top right-hand corner. That's the JPA that was referenced in this request for board action. The joint powers.
Right, but again, I understand
Yeah.
that, but why is Winona County getting put in this position when it's and then some of the documents represent 3 counties.
Right.
I don't see Houston and Wabasha signing this or being asked to commit to this.
This is being tied with MPCA had some funds available as a part of their watershed restoration and protection strategies, part of the watershed cycle. So this is supplemental funds, so to speak, for outreach activities for the WinLAC One Watershed One Plan. So we have 2 agreements.
Okay,
One,
so the question again, I understand it. So when is the WinLAC going to become an entity? Right now, it's in the
It's
planning
not-
process.
that's up to the policy committee and.
You don't have a timeline at this
June
point.
2023.
2023?
Yes, we have early 2023 to submit
Okay.
to Bowser, and then they would go through their process and then be approved by June 2023.
I think Commissioner G.
Well, yeah, so that's the question that I was wanting to get answered, because at the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, I've asked that question multiple times, and that was my understanding, is not until mid 2023. But this feels like it's directly tied to the WinLAC 1-1 plan, but the 1-1 entity is not up and functioning for another year and a half.
Right, correct.
So how can this rubber hit the road until June of 2023?
Well, this grant provides the public outreach funds.
But it's not planning, right?
It's for planning, for
Just for
trying to
planning.
get input from people in the watershed of what they want for practices, what they think is high priorities.
So with that statement, then why are we so heavily studying Winona County versus Wabasha or Houston? There's no testing in Wabasha or Houston counties.
There are, I forget how many sites there are.
Oh, I just
Yeah,
read
there's
the
some
one, I
sites,
thought I read like 4 sites. Maybe I didn't read enough.
Yeah, there's a handful of sites in Wabasha and Houston County as well. And if I could just add that while we do have the One Watershed, One Plan program, the MPCA also has our watershed restoration and protection strategy, our RAPS report.
It was
that
all
we
supposed to
redo.
be one.
But
And-
our RAPS reports, they help kind of guide and help with the planning of the One Watershed.
We were sold on a bill of goods that,
So a lot of this work is going to help me write my RAPS report that fine tunes our recommendations for the WinLAC, so that when they start drafting their One Watershed, One Plan, they can go to my RAPS report or the MPCA's RAPS report and say, oh, here are some updated recommendations from MPCA. So that's kind of how those 2 things fit together.
all right, well, Commissioner Olson,
Gonna make a motion
all right,
approve 515 with the exception of paragraph 12 per the county attorney's recommendation.
Second.
we have a motion to approve 5.15 with the deletion of, is it paragraph or chapter 12?
Paragraph 12.
Paragraph 12. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay? Okay, approved. All right. Thank you, and we'll get clarity in the future. Thank you. 5.16, adopt 2022 levy resolution. Commissioner Jacob, 168.
Oh, I was so close and it went all the way back.
Yeah, these things can be very sensitive.
All right, last time by holding my finger in just the right way, I got that tab on the right to come back.
Yeah, so I'm just asking for a separate vote because I had pushed for, especially with the amount of American Recovery Act dollars that we have coming into the county. I'd push for a less than 3%. So I just want to vote. I just want a separate vote on this vote item and the next item. I don't need to spend a long time dragging meeting out of discussion on this. We'll all have discussions on it.
Madam Chair, I would
Yes.
move to approve, if possible, 5.16 and 5.17 both.
Second,
Motion made by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve 5.16 is adopt the 2022 levy resolution and 5.17 adopt resolution for 2022 budget. And I guess I would echo Commissioner Jacob in that I was hoping it would be lower with all the money that's coming in, and we're actually having difficulty in spending the money in the right, in the right ways. And I just don't feel that taxpayers, and it's all taxpayer dollars, it's not free money. The ARPA money is not free money. It comes from our taxpayers. So I was hoping we could do something much less than 3. So that's my stance. So Commissioner Kavesi.
yeah, I just want to say that, again, we have the recommendation from our county administrator to approve this. So knowing that this is a professional recommendation, we've had discussions on this since at least September. That's some of the reasons why I'm in support of this motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay. All right, passes. All right. Moving into general business, department recommendations. 6.1, receive presentation from Winona Workforce Development Board for Good Jobs Challenge Grant and consider letter of approval. And is there somebody here or somebody going to be on,
I think Ms. Reitman is
on the board?
Zoom.
I am here. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Workforce,
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
good morning. Do we have a presentation? Which
Yeah, she is trying to talk and we can't hear.
Can you
button is
hear
she
me
on?
or you cannot hear me?
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, we cannot hear you.
Okay. My mute is off.
What do they?
Just maybe height.
Because
well,
Heidi's
check
monitoring
Heidi.
it, she said.
Hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Well, I can kill some
Heidi
time.
or is Heidi or Maureen listening in from their offices? Yeah, they both are. We're having a technical problem hearing the workforce member.
She's all lit up.
Madam Chair, we're working on it.
It's green, blinking. What's it blink when it blinks?
Can you hear me?
Hi, Maureen. Can you hear me? This is Chad.
Yep, I can hear you, Chad.
Joe's going to be in the conference room in about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Enter your participant ID, followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue to do a joint application with our workforce board.
All in?
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello? 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 Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, save the day.
There's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay, you go this way. Drive safe.
Yeah, be safe.
You'll probably get there, but you may not get home.
I'm staying overnight.
Oh,
I have
okay.
another-
Can you hear me?
Good luck.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank
I
you.
think they're working on it right now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, they're working on it right now. We'll see
No,
what
it
happens.
seems like the last couple Zoom meetings I've been attending, technology is breaking down. I don't know what happened. We had a one watershed, one plan meeting on, was it a week ago, Monday? And it just, nothing was working right. Everybody was cutting in and out.
No,
I don't know what it was. You think it's snow?
IT would say it's user error, but.
Can you hear me?
Sure, yeah. But I mean, they had been working great, the same facility and
yeah.
people, and it just was not. And then something else, the Semsure meeting, we had problems.
Could we do this explain?
We could-
Do why we're
Yeah,
waiting
we
for them,
wanna-
or do we have, is that gonna be a online presentation too?
No, I think they're.
Who's supposed to be talking?
Yeah.
Kitty Reitman.
Lower corner.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, there she goes.
Is that better?
You can hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I'm calling in. So I don't know, for some reason I couldn't get the screen voice to work. So anyway, good morning, board. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Ginny Rittman, and I'm the Executive Director for Workforce Development, Inc. And so I am not representing the Workforce Development Board of Winona, but rather of Southeast Minnesota. So the 10 county area to your neighbors to your west. Currently, Winona County's Workforce Development Board does not have a director, and we do a lot of work together between the two local areas. And so together we make up what's called Region 6, or Workforce Development Region 6. So Workforce Development, our area and Winona's area make up a Region 6 together. So the reason that I'm here today is representing both of our areas to ask for support of the Good Jobs Challenge that we're working on. And I'm going to share my screen if I can. We'll see if that works. And you do have this information in your packet also. Can you see that okay?
yes.
There, it came up. Thank you.
Okay, great. So together between Workforce Development, Inc., so again, the Southeast region, and then Winona, we are planning on submitting a proposal for the Good Jobs Challenge, which is funding that was made available by the Economic Development Administration. There's quite a bit of funding, $500 million available to organizations across the country. The resources are meant to go towards workforce development, system development, program design, and program implementation. There's 3 separate phases. So the system development, the program design, and program implementation. We are much farther ahead than a lot of other areas in the country in terms of our system development. You know, we do have a workforce development system in Southeast Minnesota. We have a very good system, really, compared to a lot of other parts of the country. But we are still going to write for that first phase to improve our system and to try to bring additional resources to workforce needs here in Southeast Minnesota. There's a little bit of information in here about why we're well positioned to be the applicant. And so WDI plans to be the applicant, but again, applying on behalf of both local areas. And then this is a little bit about the project overview. So there's the system development phase, like I spoke of, the program design phase, and program implementation. What we plan to focus on is really convening partners that it's very focused on sectoral approaches. So convening partners in healthcare and the services and trades. And I'll talk about why we're focusing on those two in a minute here, to develop and solidify those partnerships and also identify our regional challenges. That's in the system development phase. In the program design phase, then, we will take that information and put together some skills training curriculum, also expand on our current career pathways training opportunities, which we do a lot of. That's really what our kind of niche is here, our bread and butter here at WDI, is providing that career pathways training in healthcare and the trades. So being able to expand on those and expand, you know, also to Winona County, and really be able to truly make the programs that we have accessible to all across 11 counties. Right now, you know, they've been very focused in Rochester, and that's because, you know, just because of capacity, really. And so this funding opportunity would give us the opportunity to be able to expand that, truly make them accessible across all 11 counties. And then program implementation, obviously, you know, putting this together and making it happen, which is something that we have a long history of doing as well. this timeline is estimated, and the budget request is an estimation kind of a provided through the RFP, but we actually plan to apply for 5 million. That's the minimum that has to be applied for. You know, being a very rural region, that's about the capacity that we would have is the 5 million. So we're not going to ask for any more than that. And that will be separated into the 3 different phases. So this page goes into an overview of the strengths of the Workforce Development Board applying and what we're planning to do. So the system lead entity then again would be the Workforce Development Board of Southeast. And we plan to focus on healthcare and trades. And the reason for that is obviously because of need and our sectoral and industry partnerships that we already have existing, and some of the career pathways training that we already have existing in those 2. We had a 3rd leg of manufacturing in our original plan to apply, but we've since found out that one of our partners within our region, South Central College, is planning to apply, and they are applying for a statewide proposal to support manufacturing training across the state. So not only did we not want to compete with them, but they are also writing, you know, our 11 counties into their proposal, and we're, you know, including them and partnering with them in our proposal. So ideally, you know, should we both get funded, healthcare, trades, and manufacturing would be supported under this funding stream. These strengths are listed here, and these just come directly from the RFP and why we're positioned well. It's very focused on targeted populations that we already serve and do a very good job of, relationships with the key industry players, which we already have, and having our already established 2 workforce development boards. So this is, and then lastly, there's just an overview model of the project from the RFP again. So, you know, all the different partners that are at the table, we already have approval and support letters from higher ed, from our EDAs, from our community-based organizations and education. We have also reached out to employers. We hosted a convening of, we had about 100 different employers invited to give feedback and share with us their thoughts on the proposal. And the reason I'm asking for your support today is because in the RFP, we are required to list that we have our local governing body approving this. And in my region, that means a joint powers board. So I have a joint powers board that oversees, you know, the 10 county workforce development board of Southeast Minnesota. When we wanted to partner with Winona, then we needed to get Winona County approval for the application as well. So what I'm asking for is your support, and then we would need a support letter, which we have a draft for already, just stating that Winona County Board is supportive of us applying for this project. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions? I do have one, Ms. Rittman. So you're executive director of the whole Southeast 10 counties, or the 10?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes, correct.
Okay. At one point in time, SEMSHRA, Southeast Minnesota Multi-County Housing Redevelopment Authority, had a seat on that board. Does that still exist?
Doug is on it. Doug Grau is on it. No, that's some sorry.
No. So is that an open seat, or is it?
We do not currently have a seat for specific to SEMSHRA. We have that board organization.
And so do you have somebody representing Housing Redevelopment Authority?
We do, yes.
Okay. All right. That was a question. This was back when I think it was Mr. Johnson was the executive director.
Yes.
It's been a few years ago.
I remember you well from the meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. As long as we've got some Housing Redevelopment Authority on that. All right. One other question, and I think this is, it's a good thing. In all the training and everything, and we can do all the technical and everything, do you have any, and maybe it's not the right place or whatever, but people that go through some of this, are they given some, I think we're lacking in our public education, such life skills training, like how to manage their finances once they get these high paying jobs and things like that. Is there any life skills relationship in any of this training? It says I see adult basic education.
Yep. So at the core, really at the core of what WDI provides, and then in Winona, it would be our Winona Career Force Partners, is that we call it navigator or a navigation support. And so it's a position that really helps individuals move to and through the career pathways programming that we provide, and then ultimately helping them, find the employment on the tail end. So we really look at this navigator as being the person that supports them through all of those, and developing all of that skill set, including budgeting, including, addressing their barriers to employment, whether that's transportation or childcare, and really helping them navigate, the entire process through and then to, through employment. And we also keep them enrolled and keep them, within the program for 12 months after employment as well. So we really support the whole person and the whole family as they're going through the training program from start to finish.
Okay, all right, that's encouraging.
Madam Chair, I would
Meyer.
move to approve item 6.1, which would be to provide a letter of support for this effort.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve 6.1 and send a letter of approval from Winona County. Any further discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I was wondering, she suggested that they have a letter, but the letter's not included in our packet. I just feel a little bit like we're signing the check before we see what we're signing. I feel like I'd like to see the letter before I approve it.
Yeah, by chance, do you have a copy of the letter you could put on the screen?
I do not for Winona County. I wasn't sure if you typically would, create your own, or if you wanted a draft letter to sign. There is draft ones that went out to the other 10 counties, so I could certainly provide that same draft. Whatever the board prefers, I'm happy to do.
Is it time sensitive that we could see the letter and then approve it at our first meeting in January? Is there a time sensitive issue?
I think the application deadline is around the 25th, so I'm not sure when your next meeting is, but that's probably doable.
January
25th?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I guess we could ask to see see a draft prior to us.
Send us the draft to Maureen.
Yeah.
Then we could
Put
on
it in the
agenda for
first.
first
Okay.
meeting.
I'm sure it's gonna be fine, but you can put anything in there at all.
Yeah, well, we could do-
If we approved it before.
Do COVID testing.
That makes sense.
So do I need to withdraw my motion?
Well, or just pending review of the draft letter to see if that's okay
We should
with us.
table it.
Table?
Technically.
Yeah, okay. So.
I'll
you
withdraw
wanna-
my motion.
And you withdraw your second?
Okay.
Okay. So we will table, Ms.
I'll make a
Rittman.
motion to table.
Go for it.
Yeah,
I'll second
Okay.
it.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Meyer to table to January
First meeting.
4th? Is it 4th?
Yeah,
January 4th. Okay. No, there's no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, that's approved. So, Ms. Rittman, look for action to be taken on the January 4th meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you. All right, moving into 6.2, consider, discuss backup public safety answering point.
Okay, so as part of the jail project, we needed to move the public safety answering point, which the dispatch center, from its current location to a better location, which is actually part of the old jail, is being renovated for that purpose. One of the responsibilities that is required of the PSAP, we call it, dispatch, is that they control certain doors and certain locks and things in the jail, and then they oversee some of the activities in there, as well as provide for dispatch services and other services that go through, non-emergency services that go through that center. So during the construction, there was planned about a 4 or 5 month timetable where we would have to, our current dispatch center would be inoperable, and we would have to move to a secondary dispatch center or find some other way to handle calls coming into Winona County. Jennifer Lavala reached out to me, the supervisor, excuse me, the supervisor of the dispatch center, and talked about that particular scenario. But at the same time, we looked at it as a possible opportunity to enhance Winona County's dispatch services for the long term. The reason being is we have to invest a certain amount of money to the moving of the existing center for temporary purposes. Well, rather than just move it back and supplement it with whatever new equipment and connections for communications needs to be done, instead of just spending that money and then moving it back and having one dispatch center, we looked at the possibility of making that temporary dispatch center a permanent backup facility. And we can get into some of the discussion of the reasons why that's optimal rather than using another county or another dispatch center. But for the other thing that kind of tied into this that created the opportunity was that Jennifer indicated that the state had basically provided a new allocation of emergency or 911 funds. In the past, we get an allocation every year, and we had a certain amount of reserve that we had after we paid most of our expenses, or I mean all of our expenses that were eligible. And then, so we had some reserve, and then we also are now getting scheduled to get about twice as much funding as we had in the past.
I have to stop you right there and question you that the funding, because I sit on an emergency communications board legislative, and that small amount of money was reduced because the loans for a big project have been paid off. So
Yeah, this is based on the amount of money that we're anticipating getting, and I can let Jennifer.
so I mean, they
deal
say
with
the
that.
money is going down, so I'm
No,
getting
that-
mixed.
yeah.
Madam Chair, that money was originally allotted towards paying for the armor system.
Right.
It was coming out of the E911 funds. Now
Yeah.
that invoice for the armor system has been now paid off,
Right.
that money is going to be allocated to the 911 dispatch centers for them to utilize for 911 funds because it was originally taken out of that. So it's
So-
going back into our pocket. So we're
Yeah.
going to get that dollar amount back for us to utilize for 911 for Winona County specific.
So the
That seems to be in
analysis,
conflict with what some information I've been told. It'll be a lesser amount is what I was told.
Well, I thought that was the money that comes from the safety, from the.
No, ma'am. It's going to double the amount. That dollar amount was originally taken from the 911 funds to go towards the armor system.
Right.
Now that invoice has been paid off,
Correct. I
that is
totally.
going to be reallocated back to us to utilize.
yeah. So in the,
Lesser amount.
well, it may be lesser than the original amount, but it's still enough to cover this particular project.
Well, I'll have to check with my
Yeah,
other
yeah.
committee members.
So in the analysis that Jennifer put together, we can, it shows that money. So it shows where we would get the money for this project, which would be our current 911 reserve, and then incoming payments over the next 5 or 6 years. We showed a cash flow projection of the project. So basically what it gets down to, and I'll let Jennifer fill in the blanks, but it allows us to basically add some equipment to what will be the temporary backup facility, and then also create a separate data connection and communications connection to it. And so when we move back into the new facility, we'll have an operating backup facility that is completely independent from the new facility, which means that if this building is destroyed or inoperable or flooded, we'll still have communications for the county for emergency services and other things. We can also use it as a backup for large events and things that right now strain our facility because we don't have enough seats for the backup operators. And as we mentioned in the analysis, there's also the potential to use it for splitting our staff in situations of public health emergencies, where you can create a situation where they don't mix, and then you don't have the possibility of mixing, with a virus or something like that. So there are a number of advantages to it, and I kind of didn't want to steal all your thunder, but because this all came from Jennifer and just work with me to kind of put it together. But we laid out, I think, number one, we don't even use all the 911 funds that are available to us, and we can operate, buy the equipment, set up the communications, and we have a facility. The highway department has been working with Jennifer as well. We have an area there that was the old auditor or surveyor's office area, which we can utilize. We're using for the temporary setup, but also could then utilize for the future. So I'll let you kind of build on that.
Yeah, I guess I'll take questions if anybody has any.
Sorry.
You did a pretty good job of
Sorry.
summarizing what
Well,
we're
I think it's
trying to
important
do.
though for them to hear why this is important to you and the dispatchers.
It's important to me for a couple of different reasons. This jail project is imminent, coming around the corner very quickly for us. It's not a matter of wanting a backup dispatch center. It's a matter of needing one to be able to continue our day-to-day operations and provide the same level of quality service without having to speak over the sound of construction on the other side of the wall. I think the citizens of Winona County expect us to provide that level of service to them. When seconds count, we want to make sure we're not having to ask them to repeat themselves multiple times. In addition to that, given our proximity to the river and unprecedented weather events in the last couple weeks and over the course of several years, I think it's important for Winona County when we discuss looking at a temporary location to just build that infrastructure and allow us to have that redundancy so that should we ever have a catastrophic event and have to evacuate this location here at the law enforcement center, we'd be able to move just a few miles down the road and still be able to operate with the same level of quality service on an entirely redundant system and still, in a large scale incident, help the public.
So right now, previous to all this, in the event of a catastrophic event, what's our backup plan currently?
We don't really have one. We have.
I thought we had some connections with St.
We have a
Charles.
backup. We have the camper, what do you call it? The command vehicle that we've utilized in the past. However, it doesn't have the capabilities for us to field 911 in it. We'd be taking portable radios and we'd be taking flip phones to have 911 calls transferred to handheld cell phone devices and then scoot out of the way.
Right now, we have an agreement with Rochester, Olmsted
Correct.
County that our emergency, if our 911 system goes down, which it did twice last year,
Yes.
those calls get routed to Rochester. So that's our backup.
At one point, we had an agreement with the city of St. Charles at their facility, correct?
They made an offer that we could move into their new facility or their remodel, but we never took them up on it. Then we were offered to go into it with Lewiston when they had plans to build a new fire hall. That never happened either. They haven't done anything, but we didn't go into it.
So there's no existing coordination between,
The only existing coordination is with Rochester, Olmsted County to take over our 911 lines if ours goes down. And then as Jennifer already said, we have the SOAR rig that has some capabilities, but to get phone lines in there would be a problem. Where are we gonna answer the phone?
Essentially, it's just a space for us to work out of as opposed to having that infrastructure for us to be able to perform our job.
And then we have the command trailer that we pull up to the fair and we take out in emergencies. We borrowed it to Olmsted, to Houston County once already. That's
so this won't impact any agreements with anyone else within.
Yeah, the other thing that I failed to mention was that E911 funds are restricted to certain purchases. So the county, if we get the money, we can't really use it on other things. So we would be basically building up a surplus for the next several years. And the money would sit there and we'd have to, there might be a few things along the way that we could replace, but it wouldn't be utilized.
And utilizing this 5-year lease option, it does allow us to continue to build that reserve we have in place. It's not utilizing all of the money that's coming into us. It still does allow us to provide a cushion should we have to make any repairs.
And the other thing, and this is true with a lot of our IT and technology, is that in the past, the kind of way it's been approached is that the equipment is bought and then you have to rebuy it, 7, 8 years down the road. And when you put them in place where you're leasing it, you basically have a consistent cash flow on it. And therefore you don't have this big bump. You don't have to come to the county board and say, we need $500,000 this year because we have to replace all the equipment. It's end of service. It's the end of its life. They don't support it anymore. And so now we need a big chunk of money. When you do it on this way, you basically are paying the payments out over the year. And the one nice thing recently, at least in the last 5-10 years, the interest rates on leasing through the company, in this case Motorola, are very, very, very favorable to the county. So, if it was a thing where you're paying 10 or 15%, you might not want to do that. But in the case of the way the interest rates have been, you can lock in a nice financing package for the next 5-6 years and not worry about that big blip in requests.
I have a couple of questions here on your, the math sheet here. You have E91 reserve and then E911 revenues. So are those,
So
and I did look up and because the 911 funds back in June or something, they got, and so I still puzzled that we're getting so much more money, that it was reduced from 95 cents down to 80 cents from what we're collecting from every cell phone user in the whole system. So I'm still puzzled that we're getting
Well,
so much more money.
that's the amount that we're getting, but that's the whole package, right? So, but now we're also getting the money that was originally allocated to another system, the Armalite.
Oh, but
system.
I hate to say Armor is needing some major upgrades. I mean, the expense hasn't gone away. Actually, the expense with FirstNet and everything. I mean, so don't think that the Armor's, I mean, I've been told it's reaching the end of its natural capacity. All the radios are in desperate need of being replaced. Am I not correct?
We just
they've
replaced.
been replaced.
you
Okay,
replaced
but I
all of
mean,
them.
that's countrywide. It's not just Winona
Right, but
County.
ours, we've replaced.
Yeah, so where do these numbers come from? So you got the reserves and this goes from 22 out to 2027. And you've got a lot of revenue here. So which is some specific, you say grant. Now, are you guaranteed that grant for?
Yes, that's the E911, that's the tax dollars that come out of your cell phone bill and all those things that are collected by the state. The State Emergency Communication Network allocates that revenue from that specifically for 911. It can only be used for 911 services out to the surrounding counties. Originally, we were receiving $148,000 per year, and that was what we received. Now that will be doubled because that Armor system bill has been paid off. That money is being reallocated to us, which makes it a $269,000 grant per year for us.
So is that a guaranteed grant? You're going out to
Yes.
you're assuming out to 2027, but wouldn't that be based on?
It's a concept plan, and so what we need to do is to know that the board, we're looking for a motion to approve the concept plan, then the actual agreements have to be done, and all that comes back to the county board to approve.
I'd make that motion to approve the.
Well,
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the concept plan and second it, but I still, I don't understand your math here, where this is all coming from. Because again, I've gotten conflicting information from other agencies. So we need to fine tune the math. So now your concept plan though, is you're thinking of putting something out in the highway department?
Yeah.
And how much space does that require? Is that in the big break
One
room?
No, just one room off. If you come into the highway department from the public entrance, you keep going straight, you basically walk into a wall. It's that room over there. It's on the
Before
other
where we
side of
have
the
our
rock shaker.
road and bridge meetings at, the room that we walk through.
That's the old surveyor's office, got a bunch of filing cabinets.
That room.
Okay.
And this is just my thinking on this is I had talked to Ben Klinger in the past about our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and how, we have it in the same building, and where do you have a backup emergency operations center with the communications, all that kind of stuff. And we've always talked about, what do you do in that case? The highway department is situated in such a way that once you start adding communication equipment to it, that if you have to move out of this facility to that other room, the break room, and set up shop as an EOC, that's possible too. So this creates the foundation for some things in the future that we might be able to utilize with very low expense, because once you put in that infrastructure, you've got communication, radios, all that kind of stuff.
How many miles is it between here and the highway department? 4 or 5?
That
And
seems very
feel-
appropriate in the
feel
event
that
of an
it's-
emergency. If there was 2 facilities right on top of each other, there would be no separation. So if there's a
Right.
tornado touchdown or
Yeah.
we got
Flood.
up, they're close within the community, but not right on top of the existing facility. So that
Okay, I
seems like
mean,
a.
if we
and-
think
and
that's the
smart
best, or it's just,
Well, and
we
the
haven't
space-
finalized. that.
And we
It's
have the
just-
space and it's not being used.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're not buying a new building, you're not renting another location, you're not, all that kind of stuff.
So how this technology and equipment, will this separate facility be used on a regular? The worst thing I found is you take a piece of electronics and you sit it in the corner and don't use it. And then when you go to use it, it don't work.
Yeah.
So are we gonna
There would be a
potentially
plan in
put
place
people-
for consistent testing of the equipment to ensure that it is operable and working the way it should. And I'm not saying we put this equipment over there and only if there's a tornado, we're gonna utilize it.
there's a lot of planned events within Winona County where there's a higher volume of calls for service or much larger radio traffic, in which our dispatchers could take that additional strain from our primary P staff and operate out of that backup dispatch center on a more regular basis. We could be the county fair, steamboat days, Winona State homecoming, 4th of July, the days that we wind up having a much higher call volume, we'd be able to utilize that and take that strain off of our primary PSAP. So it would get used, not just sit there. We'd also be able to use it for training in new staff members in a more live situation with a little less pressure off the being in a live actual 911 emergency. They can train on the equipment without actually being in the PSAP as well.
And will it help in my neighborhood? Will my 911 call come to Winona County?
Absolutely.
Or will it still go to La Crosse?
No, it'll go to 911, goes to 911 in Winona County. That's part of the.
No,
next gen
my neighborhood
cell phone.
goes to La Crosse.
So that's part of the next gen 911 project with the GIS system that's working towards 911 calls to make sure they get routed to the correct PSAP. That's not necessarily part of this project. That is something that the state of Minnesota is working hard to ensure. Another reason why having the correct phones, that is a very good question, helps me to add to this. So part of the problem with 911 calls being routed to Wisconsin, if we don't put the infrastructure with the proper 911 phone system in this backup dispatch and just rely on forwarding those 911 calls to cell phones, the issue we run into is 911 calls that you might make go over to the Wisconsin side, then they transfer over to our administrative lines instead of our 911 lines. So if we try to even just piecemeal this out to just moving 911 and not administrative lines, we still lose it in emergency phone calls if we don't move the administrative lines over with it. So by putting the entire shebang in this backup dispatch center, it would ensure that we would still field your phone calls, whether it gets rerouted through La Crosse or not.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can I ask a question?
yes.
Okay, so I'm curious to know, do we own the equipment now? And is this a change in our policy to decide we're gonna lease instead of owning?
We own our equipment now, but the equipment predates my employment here, so I can't speak to that specifically without having to do some research on that.
For that equipment, that's correct. But in other situations in the county, whether it's IT equipment, radios, or guns, rifles, or whatever, we've actually started to lease or drag it over 3 years or 4 years. So we've made at least under, as I've approached the budget on these big purchases, we've tried to get them so they level out consistently so that the budget isn't impacted in any given year.
Yep, and then,
We've done that with fleet, and then successfully reduced our fleet by about 50 vehicles over time too, with the help of obviously the various departments. So it's been successful in keeping the budget that volatile.
and then your lease kind of ends for the life of the equipment.
Yeah, and you're going to see, actually, I should shadow this, is IT has a similar project coming forward with all of our switches and security equipment for the infrastructure of the county, the county's communication system. And that's because over time, that strategy was, well, we'll just replace them when we'll buy them and then replace them later. Well, what happens is, as you know, in technology, especially that kind of technology, end of life is usually 5 years. And what happens is they quit supporting it, they quit updating it, they quit providing security fixes, and then you're in a situation where you have old equipment that works, but you may run into problems with security breaches and so forth. So you need to replace it. Well, that could be several hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. And to come to the county in any given budget year and say, well, we need to pump up the budget, $400,000 or $500,000, that would have a major impact on taxes. So what we've been doing there is start to look at leasing this equipment as well, so that it ties into the end of life, or at least a little like with our cars, for instance. Maybe we have a lease for 3 years, but we keep it for 4 because it's still low mileage or whatever. Kind of same with the equipment. It may outlast the lease a little bit, but you play that by ear depending on what's advantageous to the county. So
I see this just completely as using the funds transparently for a local need. We're improving services. It all makes perfect sense. If the funds are not used currently, we could build some reserve in the future.
Well, we have a reserve, and we're actually under this plan. There will be a reserve that's still built, so that you have some cushion in case there's any other kinds of equipment that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I don't mind a small cushion, but I'm not big on, hoarding taxpayers' dollars into the future, and then look for a purpose for that money. Right now, we have a purpose. We have a clear and present need. We're gonna reduce any further impact on our local property tax levy. So this is very easy for me to support. I'll call the question.
Okay, I just,
Takes a 4-1 vote.
We can do some additional analysis on the revenue for you.
yeah, I'm just
as supporting
nervous about
information.
these
I think-
dollars and cents.
I
where
would
they're
like to
coming
see
from.
it, the board act on it, but doesn't mean we can't give you some information on that.
Right, right. Okay. So we have called the question. All those in favor of the question? Aye. Okay, so that,
We're gonna vote on it.
Take the
so
vote,
the
yeah.
vote, but the vote was, I apologize, who made the motion? And second was,
The original motion was, who made the original motion?
Yeah, to support the,
I think
I
I
don't,
think
I
I
didn't write
seconded
it.
it, but
I
I'm not
apologize,
sure.
I didn't write
You
it down.
made the motion.
Pardon me?
Commissioner Jacob and Commissioner Meyer.
Jacob and
seconded.
Meyer, Commissioner Jacob and Meyer,
It's been
to
so long, I
support-
forgot.
to consider a public safety
That's
answering
what I
point.
have down here.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes. But I will like to see some more documentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, 6.3, receive monthly finance and budget update.
There's Pat.
Pat. There's Pat.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Pat. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be going over the November update. November cash in the revenue fund started at 11.6. Actual revenues were 6 million. Actual expenses are 1.8. Ending cash is 15.8. For the whole year, cash started out at 14.3. Actual revenues were 20.3 million. Actual expenses were 18.7 million. Ending cash is 15.8. The variance this year compared to last year is a 1.5 compared to a 1.2. For all the funds being presented here, it's a variance is a 2.1 compared to a 1.9. I do want to point out that community services is positive at the end of November, but when I looked at it this morning, we are negative, and I anticipate that there will be a negative after we complete the remaining year with payroll and payables. So there will be a resolution coming to the board to basically transfer funds from the general fund to human services to bring them to zero.
Pat, question regarding that. All the money that's coming from the federal government and such, how does that impact community services? We're still negative with all that extra COVID dollars and ARPA funds?
The
and stuff?
COVID dollar, the ARP funds and even the CARES funds were allocated to various projects. They couldn't be used as just replacement revenue. So you have to have, so let's take the ARP, let's take the COVID funds because the ARP funds really haven't been applied. Or there's actually a good example, maybe the ARP funds. So we have ARP funds, the board approved the replacement of the new software, it's called CaseWorks. So HHS will be implementing some new software for their caseworkers and all that particular, that kind of thing. That was several $100,000, right? So that's a project that's eligible under the American Rescue Plan, the State and Local Government Fiscal Recovery Act, or portion of it. And it's what it was allocated to is the $3.1 million that's been identified as revenue replacement, revenue recapture, whatever you want to call it. You can't just take the $3.1 million and add it to reserves. That's not allowed or you can't use it to reduce taxes.
But we spent a lot of it on,
Well, but when you spend it on a project like CaseWorks, for instance, you're spending money that HHS would have spent, and would have come out of the budget and made their deficit bigger, but now you're spending it out of this other pot of money. So we are getting the benefit of it by doing projects and things that the county board would have to consider and possibly do or not do, depending on priorities, that would impact HHS, but it doesn't reduce the existing revenues and expenses that we get from the state for services and so forth. There are some areas where it does touch on that, and that's public health and emergency services, for instance, emergency management. where we can allocate the net deficit. So if the public health has various grants, so you can have money that's coming in for services, grants, and so forth, but there's still a cost to public health that the county bears, which would then be reflected in the levy, so to speak. That is an area where we can apply that $3.1 million or portion of it, which was in the budget document, was around 400 and some thousand, where that's applied to those salaries and that deficit. So that does impact HHS positively in the long run. It's very complicated. It's hard to follow the money around to different places and see the impact. But for Health and Human Services, the bottom line is that there's money we get from the state, and there's money that the county has to kick in. And in the end of the day, it either comes up positive or negative, depending on the experience for that year. So I'd say we are benefiting from the ARP money, but we're not adding it. It's indirectly being added to the bottom line, I guess is the best way to put it. So you're not going to necessarily see it in HHS's, the report that Pat has for HHS. I know it's complicated, sounds kind of hard to follow, but that's the way it works.
Like government talk.
Yeah, it is. I'm just the messenger.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I know.
in
Okay.
that case, so.
All right.
Saying it could be
Oh,
worse.
It could be worse, but again,
No,
Hi, Karen.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
yes.
Thank you. I just also wanted to add to, thank you, Administrator Fritz for updating the board with the ARPA funds and the COVID CARES funds. And you did a very nice job summarizing that. The other piece of it is that I do, want to spend some time doing some education with the board, and I think Administrator Fritz has done that. That there's areas within my budget that expenses are very fluid. And they're not static, like, if you're purchasing, a snowplow, what you're going to spend. There's areas within my budget, such as does not meet criteria with Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center. We have an individual that has been there for almost 3 months now that we are having to spend about $1,400 a day, just because we cannot find a place for him to step down to. So that is an area of expense. The other area of expense is because of our mandated services, we have to provide those services, is overtime. We have a very, I think this year is probably one of our highest areas that we've had to expend some overtime. And I want to do some fleshing out of that once we get to the end of the year, what has been due to the pandemic and where, were we able to use some of our COVID dollars to be able to supplement some of that? Or is there a need within HHS to supplement some of that overtime or hire staff, and so we can reduce that cost. Other areas, again, out-of-home placements, you guys are all aware of that, so just want to be able to provide that education to the board. As I looked at it, I believe was it this morning? Or it was like 100 and some thousand that we are negative at this point in any one of those expenses. If we were able to wipe them out, would have brought us to a
and I
balance.
think to kind of answer your point, the ARP money that's allocated in the 2022 budget, for instance, for public health, would apply to their budget next year. So at the end of the year, when we do, let's say they were down a couple $100,000 next year at the end of the year. Well, when Pat eventually allocates the ARP money at the end of the year, then that would be funding it. In the past, that would come right from the reserves, but in like next year, it would come from the ARP funds that were allocated in the budget. So yeah, and so I think those are all, yeah, it's complicated. It's not Health and Human Services revenue flows and expenses are just very complicated, and they're not always on the side of the county.
Sadly.
No, that.
Yeah.
And with a new administrator coming on, you might want to, yeah. I mean, again, it's a huge part of our budget, and it's something that we can't seem to control because it's beyond our
I
control.
think the one thing I would leave you with, though, is Standard & Poor's through the bond issue affirmed the county's strong financial position, and it gave us a very enthusiastic rating, for that, and we did well on the interest rates, and it shows the overall health financially of the county. So I think as far as the public goes, that's something to be proud of. So.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and then, in this, I was in just as an anecdotal, situation, I was on a call with Commissioner Harpstead, who's the Human Services Commissioner. And she herself is stating that, that individuals are being stuck at an Anoka Regional Mental Treatment Center. And then because of the staffing shortages and because of everything that is going on, that they, as a state, can provide those step-down services, but yet then turn around and are charging us for leaving them there when it truly is not just it is not our problem.
Right. But
So
we get
those
the
are
bill.
some things, yes, so
Yeah.
those are some things that we are also working on legislatively. So,
All right, thank you. All right, Pat.
Very good.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I guess we'll go on to the summary.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Summary cash flow starts out at 18.5 million. Actual revenues are 41.2 million. Actual expenses are 39.2. Ending cash is 20.5. Variance this year compared to last year is the 1.9 compared to the basically 1.9. It's basically almost the same. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. Expenses through November are at 92%. Looking at all the expenses in the funds that are being displayed are, I think the highest one is human services, which is at 92.63%, which is actually really good. I would say we're right on target. And the other item that I would note in this document is interest. We've budgeted 250,000, but at this point we've only brought in 153, and that's because interest rates are so low. Any questions on this document? If not, thank you.
All right, thank you, Pat.
Pat.
Right, that concludes the general. Let's see, Commissioner Kavesi, you had an announcement.
Yeah, I just had an announcement. The Winona Area Sheltering Network and the Interfaith Network, which is all citizen volunteers, are welcoming a refugee family. A parent and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old are moving into our area. The father worked directly with our U.S. military in Afghanistan, and they had to flee Afghanistan. So they're moving in shortly. And the volunteer networks have taken on the responsibilities for that.
Anybody else come up with anything? All right. Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.